is Leslie Lovelady. I have 2 children, a 6-year-old and an 11-month-old. Will be a year next month. My first birth, I did not use a doula. I was induced for preeclampsia, and I had an epidural, and I was pretty out of it at the birth, so I decided that I wanted a totally different birth experience for my second. So my second, I hired a doula and wanted to go completely unmedicated birth, and it was a wonderful birth experience. I used Tracy Abney, and she was great. I had a very fast labor and delivery. I actually got to L&D completely dilated, and Tracy showed up within 15 minutes of getting there, and we got in the bed, and she held my hand the whole time. That was probably the biggest impact, the most good that she did for me. She held my hand. She told me how great I was doing. She told me that I was strong enough and that I could do it. And she stroked my hair, and she put a cold rag on my head when I didn't know that I needed it. And she was mostly my advocate. She remembered what was on my birth plan, and when I couldn't talk for myself, she talked for me, and she told them what I wanted and what I didn't want. And if I could go back and have my nurses and my doula collaborate, if there was something that I could change, I would say that I wish there had been more time to communicate within the 2 groups what I wanted for my birth plan, because Tracy kind of had to intervene a few times and tell them, no, she wants to lay cord clamping, and I ended up getting the infusion of PIT afterwards. I had talked that I didn't want it, but it wasn't in my birth plan. I wish I had been there, but anyway, there wasn't a whole lot of communication before, because there just wasn't a whole lot of time. So if there was something I could have done differently, it would have been that. But overall, it was an amazing birth experience. I remember every moment, every detail. It was wonderful. And my first, I just don't remember much. It was I was on MAG, and I had an epidural, and it was very foggy. I don't remember much. So I'm thankful for my birth team and my nurses and my doula. It was great.
My name is Olinka Holly, and I have 2 children, working on 3, and I delivered at Huntsville Hospital. My favorite memory was when everybody got to my house, and it was like, okay, we're going to do this, and my husband was in a panic because he's like, we have to get to the hospital, but my doula was like, I'll meet you there, everything is fine, everything's going to be great, and so it was just nice to just do it at my house a little bit more than I did before with my first child. I really enjoyed that. One of the things when you're in labor, you get hit with a lot of options. And sometimes, I won't say that it's intentional, but sometimes a lot of options are left out. It's kind of like, well, these are your options, and these are your only options. And my doula was like, no, you can do this, this, and this, So that really helped me. It really encouraged me, and it really let me know, like, okay, I have a voice, which is something I didn't feel like I had the first time.
Same for you.
Well, my original answer would have been to deliver the baby, because it's like everything was just so in harmony. If you can be in harmony while you're screaming. But it was just so complete already when I was in labor. It's just only thing that was missing was like just delivering the baby, and it seemed like I had everybody there that I needed there, even though the doctor was not actually there. I just felt like we got this, let's get it finished. But that's what I wish could have happened. It almost did, because the head was off. The difference between my first birth and my second birth. With my first birth, it was very, on my end, to me, it was very traumatic. I watched all the videos, I read the blogs, I took the classes. I was all geared up and ready for birth with my son. And a week before he was due, I was just going to a regular checkup, and it was like, well, your blood pressure is high and you're swollen, so you need to go to the hospital. And at first it was like, just go and get checked out and we'll go from there. and that turned into, well, you're being admitted. And um, the weird thing that I think about now when I look back is like my mom was there. My aunt that worked at the hospital as a nurse was there. I had another aunt there. I had a lot of family, my sister, but none of us knew enough to, say, no, this is not what we're going to do. Um, and even my husband, I mean, he didn't make it in time for the actual birth, but even he looks at it and he says, well, that birth saved our son's life. Well, that birth, I mean, it was very traumatic for me to have a C-section and not know anything about a C-section, because in the classes, they don't tell you about a C-section. They just say, do X, Y, and Z so you don't have one because you don't want to have a C-section. And so when I was told that I was having one, I was panicked. I mean, I was the only person in the operating room screaming like I was in labor, like pushing, because I was just so terrified. The difference with that, with my doula, is that my doctor, she never really said, like, you're going to have a C-section if this doesn't happen. But it was this thing like, well, at my last appointment, it's like, well, you're due on Saturday, so let's schedule you to be induced on Thursday, because you're not looking like you're going to give birth on Saturday. And just each time that I would go to appointments and things like that, I would share that with my doula, and she would just hit me with so much information. And it just empowered me. It empowered me to stand up for what I felt, first of all, because I don't feel like I know it all. But when you become a mom, whether you're pregnant or actually have the baby, you have intuition and you can trust your body. That is like a big, big word. I mean, big, big phrase. Trust your body. That my doula taught me. And so that was really major for me. And I was able to VBAC, even though, it was a lot of odds against me, with that. And my son at the time was only 18 months. So that's a short period of time to be pregnant again and then try to VBAC, because it was a lot of talk of being ruptured and all these other things that could happen, complications, and which is true. And I won't say, just go totally against doctors because they don't know anything. They do. They know what they're doing. But with a doctor, they have to kind of give you the worst case scenario to protect themselves, and you have to, respect that, but you also have to just trust your body and know that you have everything in you to give birth naturally. And even if it's not completely naturally, you can do what is natural for you. Like, natural birth might not be for everybody, but you can still give birth, your birth. And all that I learned from my doula, and I really appreciated that. And I was able to VBAC, not only VBAC, it only took 5 hours from start to finish. From the time my water broke to the time my daughter was born was a complete 5 hours. So just think about the high that gives you. like bring it on. But and that was the biggest difference from having a doula and not having a doula the first time. And even those moments where I felt a little weak, like, okay, we're gonna try this or try that, it was like, no, we can do this, and so that's my story.
My name is Stephanie Stenmark, and I have 3 children, an 8-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And by far, my favorite birth experience was my third, my 1-year-old. I used hypnobabies, and I had a hypnodoula with that birth, and it was amazing. I was a little worried that it wouldn't work. I thought it sounded a little like this, voodoo fake, kind of stuff. And it actually worked so well that I was more comfortable with my hypnobaby's birth than I was when I had my epidurals. Because I still felt a lot of pain when I had my epidurals. Ring of fire, everything. It didn't really seem to do much for me, but my hypnobaby's birth was actually comfortable. It was, I never even yelled. it actually, it was a relief to push the baby out instead of being this scary, horribly painful experience. It was nice. And my hypnodoula was amazing. She seemed to just know what I needed when I needed it. And she was really tuned in to me emotionally. And that's something I didn't have with my other births. It was, all this hustle and bustle going on around me. And it's like, I wasn't there with my other births. Sometimes I wasn't even told what was being done to me. I had no voice. I would just happen to be, the uterus delivering the baby with my other births. But with this one, it was like, I was a person. I was the mom. This was my baby, and it was very empowering. That's a difficult one because I know the nurse's hands are sometimes tied because they have to follow doctor's orders. And for me, I think it's just remembering that, the mom is going through an emotional time, and maybe if the nurses could communicate with the doula a little better or talk to the doula, like, hey, we're thinking about doing this, maybe you want to talk with her, or, just to kind of include the doula a little more instead of being like, oh, we can't include her in the process because she's not the woman birthing, or, she doesn't have a legal say in anything. So I think maybe definitely more communication between doulas and nurses and acting more as a team, instead of all these different entities being completely separate, from each other, to understand it's all a part of the same process. And I don't know if it's legalities or liability or whatever that kind of can sometimes cause a sense of too much formality, I guess, but it needs to be a little more personal and family-like, I think. When I had the birth with the doula present, was so much more empowering because after my first, he was a preemie. He didn't do very well. I was having to be flipped from side to side every 15 minutes for about 27 hours because we were both having issues. And after that birth, I was basically, sent off to a room, and I was left alone for 5 to 7 hours. And nobody told me what was happening to my baby, where he was, what was going on with him. And I was just completely unconnected. And 7 hours later, I was finally allowed to visit him. And I remember looking at him and saying, that's not my baby. Because he was just laying there limp. I mean, when he was inside me, he was active, and I felt like he was rushed off, after the birth, and nobody told me anything. So they took me to him, and I almost didn't believe that he was mine. It was because of the bracelet. I checked his bracelet. I was like, I had no connection. And so I think, the emotional aspect of having the doula, and helping to recognize my part in all of it, and that the connection to my baby matters. She kind of helped to preserve that connection I had to my baby, and it felt right. And I really wish every mom could have a doula. I wish hospitals had doula on staff, just like they have nurses, because I had no trauma, and it's not necessarily just that the birth was easier. It was definitely that everybody involved in the process was treated like a person. My husband, his role was honored in that birth, and my role, and because with my third, she had trouble breathing a little bit too. So, but it wasn't traumatic because the doula helped me stay calm, and she was like, "It's okay," and and it was. So.